So I'm having my butternut squash and spaghetti squash with pesto, and James is having his with a regular sauce that I made with some sprouted, quinoa. And he's having his butternut squash on the side. We'll see which he eats. Now, we're going to be talking about this Peter Gabriel video. And holy moly, that was a cold seat. I warmed up your seat a little bit for you.
Oh, thank you. I'll probably feel a little cool. Still got the sun. If it got a no, yeah, a little early.
I would have put pesto on both ours, but I noticed there was some mold around the outside of the container, and I was a little hesitant to eat it myself, but I tasted some at the bottom and it tasted fine. If you want, you can try a bite.
I better not. I've got
yeah, that's why I just gave you that sauce.
Immune system for any variety of reasons. So we're going to be talking about what is this, something moon or growing up live. So Peter Gabriel. This is done, I think, 2003, or it was, I think, it might have been from a year before something like that. So, a while back, actually. So growing up, Peter Gabriel has kind of grown up. He's kind of grown out too, which is kind of sad. I always thought he was going to be
looked so fit.
thin.
Yeah.
But something happened, and it's not because of lack of exercise. He's moving around on the stage, still fairly freely, but he's got a little bit of a spare tire around the middle.
He put on an excellent show.
Yeah, it's a good show. The music, I never have really been thrilled.
If you like Peter Gabriel, you will love this video.
Yeah, because it
sounds exactly like just as good as the recording.
Yeah.
The studio.
Now that having been said, that's not necessarily what he sounds like in concert. What they will do is they will punch in corrections and things like that. I'm not kidding.
It sounds great.
Yeah, it does sound great, but just don't necessarily go to a concert and expect it to sound. It might, it might, but that he's kind of, I think, a perfectionist, and he would be one that would be using that technique.
Absolutely rehearsed, like really well.
Yeah, there's no doubt about it.
Like James was noticing the choreography and everything was excellent.
Yeah, he's. I think many of his moves are done for particular point in the song and stuff like that. He's choreographed it. Involved a fair amount of memory and things like that. It's a stark contrast to Neil Young, where Neil Young's move is basically going like this, and stuff like that. It gets kind of samey. Whereas, like I didn't fall asleep. I might have drowsed once, and that's pretty amazing considering I'm a little short of sleep.
I wish that this
good show,
pesto hadn't went moldy on me, because I wanted you to try this.
Okay.
It's an easy thing to make, just butternut squash with pesto. And so I roast the butternut squash with some basil and some onions sliced up in a roasting pan. And then I put it with some pesto sauce and the spaghetti squash, which was also roasted at the same time, but not in the roasting pan. If you roast it without putting it in the pan, then it stays hard on the outside and makes it better bowl. So anyway, and so for people who really aren't fans of squash, this is so easy to make and delicious.
Is this a kind of tea?
It's fennel.
Fennel, okay.
Yeah. So I can't remember what I looked up and that was good for, but...
Well, most of these things are good for cancer one way or another. I wouldn't call them a cure, but...
I think that one was for GERD. I'm not sure.
Exactly right. Well, I've got that with this type of cancer that I got. Most things are good as something like a control for cancer. Not an absolute control, but I don't know if anything, strictly speaking, is a cure for cancer. Anyway, I was just going to talk a little bit more about Peter. A little bit disappointed they didn't have Jeux Sans Frontières, Games Without Frontiers.
Yeah, I don't know why they didn't.
Yeah, I don't know. That's about the best tune for me. But there was way too much of For Your Eyes or In Your Eyes. He always seems to devote a huge amount of time, whatever concert he does, to that particular song. There's a similar problem here as with Neil Young, although it's not nearly as pronounced, and that is the songs are too long. They just go on.
Well, it sounded great. It was entertaining to watch.
It was entertaining to watch. Like he always seems to put on a good show. Pauline got hold of one from maybe 10 years before this, and it was a different show, but it was good. So that's another thing. It's not always the same show. He's still got some of the same moves, like sledgehammer. He's going, the way he had the clamation or whatever it was in the video, banging his head and stuff like that. But, I don't know. Yeah, it was there weren't some of the usual suspects turning up for the tunes, and I was kind of maybe a little sad about that, because a lot of the stuff, again, as with Neil Young, there's a little bit of sameness in terms of tempos and things like that. It's something I think that comes with older age. Like Bruce Springsteen used to jack up the tempos, and you listen to most of his stuff now, it's that sort of stuff. What are you going to say? And he's manic depressive, and that's according to his own account. And he can't get manic enough to jack up the tempo. What are you going to say?
That his backing band, everyone working with him, was amazing.
Yeah.
And
yeah, they're very good.
I was going to mention that one thing, I always wanted to like Peter Gabriel more than I actually do, honestly.
I'm the same way. Yeah.
And like his voice is not great, but
No.
I mean it's
Very
it's
limited.
good.
It's better than
And-
Neil Young, but
Yeah. Like watching this after that, it's like, why did we even watch that? Honestly, from my perspective, I'm so sorry. But
no, you don't have to
this
be
was
sorry.
entertaining. And
Neil Young could do
high
so
quality.
much. I mean, the Neil Young show was from around the same time as this. It was 2001.
I mean, honestly, with the
I-
Neil Young show, it felt to me like he just decided, oh yeah, let's do a concert today, and just wing it, right?
Basically,
And
yeah.
it feels like that's how he writes his songs. That's how.
Yeah.
And honestly, this is complete opposite.
That's why
right?
that's how, aside
So-
from the Down by the River, that's how I think he plays his guitar solos. He's just, I'm going to wing it. And, like jazz people can do that because
Sure.
they've really, really got a discipline. That's a weird thing. You can be undisciplined and you've disciplined yourself. But if you haven't, you're going to have problems. It's just you're going to seem like a garage band. And, the Rolling Stones sound to me like a garage band a lot because, like a lot of it is way back when they were supposed to be top of the world. It was because of drugs. And the other thing is they just don't rehearse enough. They do some rehearsing, but they don't play together. One of the worst things I ever heard was some live stuff from the Mamas and the Papas. And they'd kind of drifted apart and stuff like that.
Oh, the worst I ever heard
you've
was
sung
the Smiths Rank.
Oh yeah?
Wow.
They had been apart
So
for
bad.
a while?
No, it was just so bad live.
Okay.
Like, honestly.
Yeah. Bad harmonies and things like that, or just
Does
out of time.
Morrissey ever do harmonies? I don't know.
That's one of his
His
things that make
problem
him a
was,
little less appealing.
honestly, his singing's not good live.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, he doesn't have the greatest voice.
It was really upsetting for me because I love him. But anyway, with Games Without Frontiers, I remember hearing that when I was a teen and thinking, why did he sing, if looks could kill, they probably will? That's so bad.
It just
And honestly, like I realize that the expression is if looks could kill, right? But if you need the rhyme, you need that they probably will. So if looks can kill, and people get it, they know where you're coming from, and then you don't sound like a moron. Honestly,
here's another way you could do it. There are all sorts of solutions, and people. That's why people should revise and stuff like that. So I get the feeling that he thinks about a lot of things, but maybe not quite enough about his lyrics. So here's the thing: if looks could kill, if looks can kill, you could say both. And then you could say they probably will, and you still get the rhyme. If looks could kill, if looks
you'd have to throw
can
some longer thing into the
some more
other
music.
verse. Okay.
Okay, well you could. They probably could. Well, if
No,
looks-
just can. Can is the very
well,
easy fix.
Well, that's one thing. There's that's an easy fix, but a more satisfactory one might include saying both things, so that you actually have the cliche in there, and then you play with it. So he should have tried a lot of different things. But the solution he came up with, I don't think he even considered, well, it would have been a solution. It's just, I've got to get that rhyme in there. And he didn't consider, it was kind of jarring, like, yeah. I mean, people can say that, but I don't think he's trying to sound like someone who's just speaking informal or whatever, right?
Yeah.
So it's just, I wouldn't call it bad grammar, it's just not prestige grammar.
No. That song would be way more awesome if he'd fix that. Because one thing about having something clumsy like that just somewhere else in the song, but having it repeated.
Well, that's another thing,
Yeah.
Like where you should make mistakes is in the verses where you're not repeating it, where it's usually the tune isn't as catchy, and
you can
the volume isn't
over it.
up. You can slur over
Yep.
it. Usually, here's what the
Artists do all
Eagles
the time.
used to tell Jackson Brown. What you do on the choruses is you lengthen out the notes, and that's a form of emphasis. That's a form. We do it,
Sure.
Yeah, the Eagles understood it.
Yep.
And so Jackson Brown, his first big hit was "Take It Easy."
Yeah.
Take it. He learned the lesson from. He was trying to steal them away. They were a backing band for Linda Ronstadt, right? So he rehearsed with them and stuff like that. And they were telling me, I think they were just thinking, Jackson, we're not anyone's backup band. Wake up and smell the coffee. I know you don't like them, but they were bursting
Very
with talent.
successful. Too.
Well, it's
Yes.
they were very
But
talented.
Anyway, back to Peter Gabriel. They did this show in Milan, and I was actually a little bit shocked, but I shouldn't have been really, because one of his songs, he said he refers to himself as turning water into wine.
Yeah.
And in a video, a song that he'd performed earlier, he has the stage look like water, and
Quite impressive fact.
it did look great, and a full moon around above. And James is going to talk about the full moon thing.
Oh,
Anyway,
you wanted me to talk about that? Okay.
But what he had is he was walking on the stage.
Blasphemy!
Serious!
Yeah, exactly.
And so
Pauline was
honestly,
kind of wondering,
I
like,
was
what are the
surprised.
Italians
here
like?
he is in
Why aren't they lynching him?
Italy,
Yeah.
and it's like, wow. If they're not going to get upset with him, pretending he's Jesus, or whatever, then Christians are pretty amazing. Honestly, they really, really turn the other cheek.
But it's not really Christian, like Pauline was saying, where is it? And I'd heard him saying what sounded at first like gracias, but then I thought he said more stuff. I figure he said grazie, which is, in French is grâce, which it means thanks to, right? And so I was going, it's Italy, and then Pauline was saying, where in Italy? And I said, I bet you it's Milan, if not that, Turin or Rome, right? I think maybe you were surprised that it wasn't Rome, right? Or
I don't know.
Yeah, anyway, you'd expect it's the large city. I don't know if it's the largest, but it's the capital and stuff like that. But I was saying that Italy is, the northern part of it is very, advanced, I'm going to say it, culturally as well as industrially. The two don't necessarily go together. Russia was a classic example. They had trouble with culture. The Soviets, I should say. But, China, the same sort of thing. They were trying to industrialize in the 60s, and they had a cultural revolution, which was anti-culture, right? They were sending professors out to work on farms and stuff like that. Brilliant, you know, like it was a way of humiliating them and stuff like that. It was shameful. It's to a large extent what's happening on campuses.
Well, I'm thinking of it. You were looking up the coronavirus, and I had mentioned something about wondering about biological warfare or whatever with the coronavirus.
Yeah.
And James looked it up, and apparently, like, loads of people are saying that, or
well, some people are saying it's the Americans doing it to them. Some people are saying that it's Wuhan, the center, it's kind of like ground zero for this, is a place, and I don't know how someone would know, but a place where they do biological research. And this might have been a little experiment that got out of control. It's like someone was saying, I think it was Dennis Miller talking about giving the Iranians a bomb. And he said, doesn't anyone notice when they show films of their facilities, the signs that say on the wall that say righty tighty, lefty loosey? You know? I just don't like the idea of Russia, for example, having the bomb, because you know, like, it's bad enough fail safe in the United States. They've had all sorts of troubles. We don't know what sort of problems happened in the Soviet Union. We got an idea about a few things. China's had the bomb since 1964. And I'm afraid there are things like righty-tighty, lefty-loosey all over the place because people have to be reminded, you know. It doesn't thrill me that they got the bomb. And, of course, Pakistan has the bomb. India has the bomb. And thanks to Canada, you know.
All right. So, James was, before Peter Gabriel did that song about where the stage was water, he was talking about the moon and
now,
how
did that come
different.
Up?
Well, he was saying that.
Peter Gabriel was saying something about.
He was saying that the violence rate. Well, he was talking about the murder rate changing with the phase of the moon, the lunar cycle. So, he said that people don't realize how much is actually affected by the moon. And I would agree. There's so much that we really don't think of ourselves as being a part of nature, which is ridiculous, but we should. So James was going to explain
what astrology has to say about it. Now, I want to make it clear, I don't believe in astrology, although when I look at the way Leos behave, you know, Mick Jagger's a Leo. I tell you, you know, like, you can stereotype a Leo right off of him. And the few Leos that I know.
I've picked out Leos. Like, there's, you don't have to believe it if you don't want to, but, like, at university, there was a guy
like, I'm not going to discount it, you know what I'm saying?
He was only talking to me for about, I don't know, 10 minutes or something, and he asked me what my favorite animal was, and I said a jellyfish. So then people would leave me alone, and I said he said his was a lion, and I said, well, that makes sense since you're a Leo, you know. And he was all shocked, and it's like it was so obvious, you know, but.
Yeah, there you go. And that, you know, people should do studies like that. Can you figure out what a person is, you know, just based on the way they behave, you know? It might prove enlightening.
I don't know. I mean, I can pick out Leos because I mean, my ex was a Leo and I knew him very well, right? And so then I noticed different things about different other Leos that I would meet, right? Similarities. And so Leo is easy for me to pick out, but other ones, I mean, I don't know very many people. I'm not a very social person, honestly. I stay away from people, so but I've noticed similarities with Taurus, and now I've, like, many of my friends, way more than the average, are either Taurus or Aries.
Oh, Aries.
Aries. I don't know.
That's a little bit.
I think it's because my mother is an Aries, and she was like my best friend when we were growing up. She was like an older sister to me. So
not much difference in age.
She was young when she had me, and so yeah, I think that's why I tend to attract Aries people. I don't know. But anyway, I thought that was interesting that
Yeah.
Peter Gabriel pointed that out. But he is not the Messiah, as much as he.
Well, what I was going to say, it's the northern part of Italy is fairly secular,
Okay.
and it has been for a while. It's the industrialized area, and it's interesting. Way back when, the southern part of Italy, including Sicily, was called Magna Graecia, which means Big Greece. And so Greece had colonies in Sicily. I think I mentioned this before, but I think it bears repeating. And that was the advanced part of Italy, the southern part. There's nothing that says the southern part should be so far behind northern Italy as it is. It maybe should be further ahead. And it's definitely not now. Sicily especially, it's shameful. Now what happened? Well, let's look at Spain. You know, the southern part of Spain used to be the most advanced part of Spain. There's a place called Cartagena, and that's the root of it is the same thing as Carthage. It was actually a Punic colony, a Carthaginian colony, and the Carthage used to be a Phoenician colony. That's what Punic means. It's the Roman attempt to say Phoenician. So what happened to Spain? You know, like the southern Cartagena is in Andalusia, and that was the last part of Spain controlled by a particular religious group, and they were cleared out of there in 1492. I'm not going to say that was a nice thing to do by the Spaniards. It was much worse what the Spaniards did to the Jews that year, 1492, because the Jews weren't a colonizing and imperializing power. But now I'm starting to see a pattern. Southern part of Italy, especially Sicily, was colonized by this colonizing power. It's a whole lot less time than Spain. In Spain, it was substantial parts of Spain were colonized by this colonizing power, religious power, for 781 years. I think with Sicily it was 200 to 250 years. Now understand, that's not 25 years, which is roughly the amount of time Iraq was colonized.
But
by
also, Peter Gabriel
the
had somebody singing that sounded like Nusrat Fateh Ali Khan, but not, you know. So
well, that person was actually credited.
Okay.
Yeah, in the credits.
Well, that's very good.
That was
Like, I
actual
did
person.
appreciate the way that he introduced everybody.
Yeah,
and
he's given
it was-
everyone their
yeah,
due. You know,
that was
it's
very
not as though they were
respectful.
off in the background. Like there were a couple of
Exactly.
background singers in the Neil Young thing. Maybe you introduced them. I'm not sure,
But my point is that here, Italy, the place where the Catholic Church is.
It's ground zero for it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly, and he's.
yeah,
Nobody's
he's doing-
harassing
he's
him
doing
or
no
anything.
blasphemy.
You know, nobody's. The audience is very receptive.
Well, they're
to-
singing
they
along and
love-
whatever and stuff
love
like
it.
that, and that's the
And-
way it should be. You
Sure.
know, around the world, not just in the so-called West and stuff like that. The deal is really Western culture. I know this is. It's blasphemy with certain people. It's politically incorrect, but it's getting to the point where it's considered blasphemy. I'm sad to say. Really, the West is the rest. It's the world. You know, like you'll get people saying, "Oh, the West stole the idea of paper from the Muslims, and the Muslims had it. You know, they got it from the Chinese, and the Muslims, they got zero from the Muslims, and the Muslims got it from the Hindus, and Arabic numerals, they got them from there, you know, like the deal, and then they're going along saying it's the West, it's the West. No, the numerals, zero, algebra actually was got from the Greeks and the Hindus, but a lot of it was the Hindu stuff. And the West is actually the rest. What the so-called West did was take things from hither, thither, and yon. And it wasn't necessarily appropriating slave labor and stuff like that.
It was ideas.
It was putting, not just taking ideas, but putting them together.
Yeah.
So they got the idea of the printing from the Chinese. They got the alphabet a long, long time ago, starting with the ancient Greeks from the Phoenicians. That's an Asian people speaking a Semitic language. And the stuff got put together, and then it was made, I won't say stronger, but more creative. But that's something anyone can do. All this fun stuff, paper, printing, even gunpowder, the alphabet. It just goes on and on. It's all out there for anyone to put together. It's the rest. And if someone wants to kick against that, you're kicking against the world. You don't really believe in a so-called pluralistic society. You might believe in a multicultural society. What's really shaking down in the world today is one particular society against all the rest. And what you've got is that one particular society being kowtowed to, or bowed down to, or submitted to by so-called left-wingers, submitted to. And they're, because these left-wingers don't believe in what they call the West. But the West is really the rest. And it's a bunch of civilizations coalescing together. The Chinese and the Japanese have actually, what they've done is they're taking back, especially the Chinese, their own discoveries and stuff like that. So all of a sudden you got the Chinese doing the printing press, which was developed from their own printing. You've got Hindus actually doing mathematics. A guy like, and this is like 100 years ago, Ramanujan became one of the greatest mathematicians, not just of his time, but of all time. He got hold of a textbook, memorized it. This is in India. It's in England, and he runs into Hardy and Littlewood, two of the greatest mathematicians in England, and probably the world at that point in time, and they're just going, we're not worthy, and stuff like that. So the stuff had made it back to him, because basically algebra is largely a Hindu and or Buddhist, I won't say creation, but they're the ones who really developed it before the Renaissance. So they brought it back. It's kind of like this. They develop it. It goes into another stream. It gets developed. It flows back. There's kind of like a feedback cycle and stuff like that. But there's one particular culture that just doesn't. Well, there's two. There's the fake left-wingers, and then there's this one particular culture that's kicking against the West, and it's really kicking against the rest. And they got a phobia against the rest. They got a phobia against any religion that's not their own. There's a term for it that's been created now. I'm not going to use it. And, like, it's not going to benefit them. It's not going to benefit anyone else if they keep on kicking the way they've been kicking. I'm not talking about all. I'm talking about a select group, or select groups. One's in Syria, one's in Iraq. They're all over the place, Salafist groups and stuff like that. It's not going to work. It's you look at the Rohingya in Burma. I'm not advocating for what the Burmese have been doing to them, but what the Burmese have been doing exists in a context. It didn't start with independence for Burma. I'm not calling it freedom, I'm calling it independence. We're talking about dictatorships and stuff like that. And it didn't start with the British colonialists. It started when the Rohingya moved in there. They're colonizing and imperializing force. They killed off tens of thousands of Burmese Buddhist